Hi, how are you? I'm Chief Dean Rondeau with the Wolfeboro Police Department, and welcome to another segment of Coffee and Connections with the Chief. To my left is my able-bodied Executive Officer, Captain Mark Livy, and to my right is Kenny Paul, who's one of our senior dispatchers in Wolfeboro Central Dispatch. And so welcome to the dog days of summer. We are in July, we're heading into August. So a few things that are going on. Right now we're in the process of constructing the fiscal year 2020 budget. So we're doing the deep dive into our last 5 years worth of budget, seeing where the cost overruns have been, and trying to come up with strategies to mitigate those costs and balance obviously the needs of public safety for the citizens and guests of Wolfeboro with the ultimate tax impact on the citizens. So that's always a balancing act, and of course I have a lot of great staff members that talk through issues and come up with strategies on how we're going to minimize that. So it's actually an exciting time for me. I don't mind doing this. I really like doing the deep dive into this and trying to come up with strategies to take that ever-increasing cost to government and try and turn it down, or at least make that line go parallel. So having said that, our DWI and speed interdiction patrols are in full swing. Everything is going along well. We've been very, very busy at the Wolfeboro Police Department. We've had a lot of major cases, a lot of major investigations. We're having some good outcomes and very good results, and we continue with our drug interdiction operations and efforts in that regard, and it's business as usual for the Wolfeboro Police Department. I'm going to turn it over now to my captain, who's going to get a little bit further into operations. Captain?
Yep. Thanks, Chief. So a few things that are going on with the PD and the Central Dispatch. I can first start with Central Dispatch. Cody Lloyd's back in there, so he's on his own. We're pretty much up to full staff in dispatch, so everything's going well for this summer. Going over to the officer side, as he said, the highway safety grants, they're out there. So look for those: safe commutes, distracted driving, DWIs. They'll be out there during the week, during the mornings. So be careful of your speeds. Take that electronic device out of your hand and keep it down, and use the Bluetooth. I can't stress that enough. Other things that are going on, we did hire our 14th officer. His name is Benjamin Church. So you'll see him out on with another officer. He's not starting an FTO program. He's actually just mirroring somebody else to get out into the public, see the calls that we do go. He's got the academy that starts September 3rd. He'll be going with Christopher Dustin, who everybody should know by now because he's been part-time with us for almost 2 years, and turned over in full-time in March, I believe it was.
That's correct.
So both of them will be going to the 181st Academy, I believe it is, on September 3rd. So wish them well for that. Other things that are out there right now, as you'll see our radar signs that are out there. Remember, if you have a place that you want it near your area, your house, let us know. Give us an email. You can email both of us. You can email Staff Sergeant Maloney or Officer Spera, who takes care of the radar machines. Right now we have one that is out. We have an investigation on that, just to let everybody know. Somebody did damage that, so that's a working investigation right now, just to make it aware that why isn't it out there on Sewell Road right now. That's why. So other than that, I will turn it over to Dispatcher Kenny Paul.
My name is Ken Paul. I've been dispatching with Wolfeboro for just over 10 years now. Started at the age of 20. Lucky enough that they hired me as a young guy. I've got a background in firefighting, so it helped me easily transition to dispatching. I've been on Wakefield Fire for about 15 years now, where I'm a captain. And then as far as dispatch goes, we're the first call. We're the ones that start the whole process for emergencies, the first responder, as they call it. We're there for the good and the bad. We see the emergency through from start to end. We're fortunate to work in a community where they really seem to care about fire, police, everybody. We almost seem to get as many thank yous as we do negative calls, which just isn't common this day and age. We take every phone call from a medical emergency to a turtle in the road, and we try to handle all of them professionally and see it through and make sure it gets done. And we just try to always be there professionally and able to help whoever calls us, good or bad.
Sounds good. I just want to put a plug in for Kenny Paul. He came to us, he was very young when he came to us 10 years ago. And I want to say that he's an absolute consummate professional. He's a very smart, intelligent young man. He has a lot of skills. And what I like about Kenny is that he has infinite knowledge in firefighting and fire science, fire technology. And we really appreciate that. And he's definitely a service multiplier in that regard. He helps us immensely in Wolfeboro Central Dispatch and does a fantastic job. I also want to put a plug in while I'm on this topic for the men and women of our Wolfeboro Central Dispatch. And these are the unsung heroes of our public safety infrastructure here within the town of Wolfeboro. And as many folks may not know, the Central Dispatch, Wolfeboro Central Dispatch, falls up essentially up underneath the police department. They're part of my overall organization. But they do dispatch for police, they dispatch for EMS, they dispatch for fire, and also they dispatch for public works, the water department, the electric department as well. They are a real gem. This is a real gem that the town of Wolfeboro has. This is a very sophisticated, technologically enhanced agency that provides an awful lot of capability and capacity, not just to public safety in Wolfeboro, but to the town in general. And they are often the first people that when there is an emergency or a need, they are the lifeline. They are the first people that the citizens will contact. They are that lifeline. They are the rope in the water, so to speak, and they are the ones responsible for getting the men and women of the fire rescue or EMS or the police department dispatched to the right location at the right time in a very timely fashion. They also are our lifeline when we, the officers, are out on the road, checking on us, having that sixth sense, making sure that if they don't hear from us, that they're responding backup units. So it's high stress. I'll tell you right now, I could not do that job. I could not do your job. It is high stress. It requires an awful lot of focus and an awful lot of attention to detail. So my hat goes off to the very dedicated and brave men and women of our Wolfeboro Central Dispatch. They are really the unsung heroes. We get a lot of credit if we make an arrest or we stop a crime in progress, or the fire rescue personnel save property in the midst of a disaster, or EMS saves a life. But it really begins with the initial phone calls and the sixth sense, the institutional knowledge of the men and women of Wolfeboro Central Dispatch, making sure the right equipment and the right packages get out to those emergency locations in a timely fashion. So I just wanted to say that, and it provides so much capability and capacity to the town. It's really hard to describe everything that they do. And just a couple of things, they're constantly keeping an eye on the weather. And we have communication with them out Washington, for example. So there's an incredible amount of capability here, with communications across all bands, including the Marine VHF radio. So we're really lucky to have them, and they are an integral part of the public safety team. And I just want to emphasize that, because I feel as though they do not get enough credit for the hard work that they do. And of course, Mia Lyons, who is our dispatch supervisor. She is the dispatch supervisor for the Wolfeboro the Wolfeboro Central Dispatch, does an outstanding job at running that organization. So I'm just very happy that we have her.
Yeah, just one thing. I want to get it out there that I want to thank for those who have actually reached out and praised our officers and our dispatchers. Last month, we got a lot of positive feedback, that's probably a better term, in emails through Facebook or just coming in person to thank some of the officers in the lobby. But I do want to appreciate that. It is nice to hear that. The officers and dispatchers really appreciate it. In this field, it's very easy to be negative towards this profession, especially with the media that's been out there, if you watch TV. So we do get out there very frequently. We are out and about in many forums and different activities that we try to make sure that an officer or a dispatcher is out in that general area. So I just want to say thank you to those who have actually reached out and took the time to write something or stop in and say thank you.
So with that, I want to thank everybody for tuning in to another segment of Coffee and Connections with the Chief. If you want to be on the show, please contact Wolfeboro Community TV. Talk to Tim or Peter Boujon down there at Wolfeboro Community TV. Be our guest. Talk about anything you want. We can talk about police stuff. We can talk about the Red Sox. We can talk about the Patriots. If you want to talk about snowmobiling, we'll get Kenny down here to talk about snowmobiling because he is an avid snowmobiler. But all levity aside, we'll talk about anything you want. You want to talk about First Amendment or Fourth Amendment issues, we can talk about that too. Anything you want to talk about. But please contact Tim or Peter at Wolfeboro Community TV. Be our guest, and as always, coffee is on me. Thank you very much. And stay tuned for the safety tip of the month. Hi, how are you? Welcome back to Coffee and Connections with the Chief, and I've got some new friends here. I got Melanie, and I got Benjamin, and I got Dylan, and they're from Enfield, Connecticut. And we were talking before the show, and so we're going to talk a little bit about the differences between the Wolfeboro Police Department and, say, the Enfield Police Department, and what some of those differences may be. So, Melanie, as we were talking earlier, all right, you come from Bright Lights, big city.
Yes.
Yeah. So law enforcement in Connecticut is probably a little bit different where you're from, because they're probably more specialized. So meaning that when a crime or an incident occurs, a patrolman arrives, they take an initial report and they hand it off to detectives. Where here in New Hampshire, generally speaking, in New Hampshire, because we're rural, right? We're small, we're rural. We are the detectives.
Oh.
We are the detectives, and we can afford to do that because we're very small. We have one police academy. Everybody goes to it, whether you're coming from essentially a town with a constable, one officer, or you're coming from a sheriff's department or the state police or the Wolfeboro Police Department. In this case, you go to the state's police academy, which is down in Concord, and is 16 weeks long. And then all of our post-academy training is free.
Oh.
It's free. It doesn't cost the town any money. It's all funded by fines and penalty assessments through the court system. So we send our officers for technical crash reconstruction training, forensics training, and investigative training, interview and interrogation training, so forth and so on. So our officers build up over time an awful lot of skills, and so we become essentially a jack of all trades, and master of all, because we have an awful lot of training under our belt. I've been trained by the FBI, I've been trained by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, for example. I've been here 23 years, so I've had a lot of really good training and a lot of good training venues. Benjamin, do you have any questions? Yeah. What's your question, son? What was that? You want my opinion on Fourth Amendment issues? Give me a high five. Woohoo! That's awesome. Dylan, do you have any questions? You were asking me earlier if I drive a police car, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yes, I do. That's a great question, Dylan. That's a really good question. So yes, I do drive a police car. I drive a a fully marked police car because I want people to see me if I'm out and about. And yes, I do occasionally do traffic stops if I see a violation, and I do respond to calls for service because I have some special skills primarily in technical crash reconstruction. So I'm one of these guys that uses applied math and physics to put these very, very complex crashes back together again to try to determine fault. And or violation of law, so forth and so on. So there's some minor differences between how law enforcement is done in Enfield versus how law enforcement is done here in the North Country. So again, Melanie, I want to thank you and your children for being on Coffee and Connections with the Chief. I'm Chief Dean Rondeau with the Wolfeboro Police Department. Please join us next month for another segment on Coffee and Connections with the Chief. Thank you, folks. Yeah, nice meeting you. Give me a high five, tough guy. Woohoo! High five. Give me a high five, tough guy. There you go. I'm Chief Dean Rondeau with the Wolfeboro Police Department, and welcome back to Coffee and Connections with the Chief. And this is right now time for your safety tip of the month, and I just want to advise everybody that we're in the dog days of summer, right? We got high heat, high humidity. So if you have COPD or other types of breathing maladies or illnesses, you really want to be cautious about how much time you're spending outside. If you have difficulty walking from point A to point B, when the humidity is at 50%, you may want to think twice about where you're going to be, who you're going to be with, and how far you're going to be going. Because quite honestly, it's difficult. So keep that in mind. That high humidity, high heat can cause heat-related injuries and breathing-related injuries, and just be mindful of that and have a plan. Also, keep your eye on the weather. I am a weather enthusiast. I watch the weather constantly. The summer months are when we get most of our heavy thunderstorm activity, so you want to keep an eye on that. The last thing you want to be is out on the big lake in the middle of a thunderstorm. So having said that, thank you very much. I am Wolfeboro Chief Dean Rondeau, and thank you for tuning in to Coffee and Connections with the Chief. And see you next month.